What happens when an arrogant shelter director treats a dusty, minimum-wage janitor like dirt, completely unaware that he is actually an active-duty Navy SEAL on an undercover mission? At the Austin Animal Haven, wealthy donors see a perfect rescue facility. But behind a restricted steel door lies a freezing cell, a terrified old volunteer, and a massive German shepherd everyone claims is a violent monster. They thought they could just make the evidence disappear in the middle of the night. They had absolutely no idea the monster was a decorated war hero, and the quiet janitor sweeping their floors was his former combat partner, ready to tear their entire corrupt empire to the ground. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments which country you are watching from, and if you love stories that melt your heart, please subscribe to support our channel. The Texas heat baked the asphalt outside the Austin Animal Haven. Anton parked his rusted pickup truck near the back of the lot. He stepped out and shut the door. Dust coated his boots instantly. His faded denim jeans and worn cotton shirt made him look like a drifter looking for a quick paycheck. He adjusted his collar against the blazing sun. He walked toward the main entrance. The glass doors slid open automatically. Cold air conditioning hit his face. The lobby smelled sharply of lemon bleach and wet fur. Anton approached the front desk. A young woman sat behind a tall counter. She clicked her long acrylic nails on a keyboard. She did not look up when he stopped in front of her. "I am here for the maintenance job," Anton said. She pointed a pink pen toward a long hallway. "Manager office. Last door on the left." Anton walked down the hall. He noticed the walls along the way. Fresh paint coated the drywall. Framed photos of happy families holding smiling dogs hung in neat rows. Shiny brass plaques listed the names of wealthy donors. It all looked perfectly managed. Anton knew perfection often hid the deepest dirt. He knocked on the heavy oak door. "Come in," a loud voice answered. Anton opened the door. The office looked like a corporate boardroom rather than a rescue shelter backroom. A man sat behind a large glass desk. This was Marcus. Marcus was the shelter director. He wore a tailored Navy suit that looked completely out of place in an animal facility. His dark hair lay slicked back against his scalp. A thick gold watch caught the light on his left wrist. People who wear expensive watches in animal shelters usually care more about their own image than the animals they claim to save. That was Anton's silent observation as he stepped into the room. Marcus looked up from his paperwork. His eyes scanned Anton from the dusty boots to the calloused hands. Disgust flashed briefly across his face. "You are the applicant?" Marcus asked. He did not smile. "Yes," Anton replied. "I saw the flyer outside." "You need a cleaner." Marcus leaned back in his leather chair. He tapped a silver pen on his desk. "This is a high-profile facility. We rely on big donors and strict appearances. I need people who can work hard, lift heavy supplies, and stay completely out of sight. Can you handle heavy lifting?" "I can lift," Anton said. His voice stayed flat and calm. As an active-duty Navy SEAL, lifting 80-pound bags of dog food felt like a light warm-up. He kept that detail to himself. He needed this cover. Marcus stood up. He walked around the desk. He did not offer his hand to shake. "Minimum wage! You clean the outdoor runs! You haul the waste to the dumpsters! You unload the supply trucks when they arrive. If you break anything, I take it out of your pay. Start right now. Grab the gear from the supply closet down the hall." Anton nodded. "Understood." He left the office. He found the supply closet easily. He grabbed a heavy industrial mop, a large metal bucket, and a bottle of strong floor cleaner. He pushed open the heavy double doors, leading to the back kennels. The noise hit him like a physical blow. Dozens of dogs barked, whined, and paced inside their chain-link cages. The heat in the back area felt oppressive and heavy. The central air conditioning clearly did not reach this far into the building. The concrete floors carried the sharp stench of urine and damp coats. Anton went straight to work. He filled the bucket with water and soap. He scrubbed the concrete walkways. His movements stayed precise and efficient. He did not waste energy. He moved from one cage to the next with steady rhythm. He watched the dogs closely. Some cowered in the dark corners. Some jumped wildly against the metal gates. Anton spoke softly to them as he passed. He offered the back of his hand for them to sniff through the wire. He did not rush them. He understood trauma. 2 hours passed. Sweat soaked the back of Anton's worn shirt. He carried a tall stack of empty plastic crates toward the storage shed. He heard slow, shuffling footsteps behind him. An old man walked down the narrow aisle. He wore a faded green volunteer vest over a plaid shirt. His shoulders stooped forward heavily. His face held deep wrinkles, weathered by many years in the sun. This was Arthur. Arthur carried a large plastic bucket filled to the brim with fresh water. His thin hands shook slightly under the heavy weight. Anton stopped walking. He watched Arthur. The old man approached a cage holding a frightened terrier. Arthur carefully poured water into a metal bowl on the floor. He spoke in a gentle, soothing whisper. He reached through the wire fence to scratch the small dog behind the ears. "You are a good boy," Arthur said. "Drink up now." Anton turned back to his crates. Suddenly, heavy and fast footsteps echoed down the concrete path. Marcus marched into the kennel area. He held a clipboard tight in his hand. He looked extremely irritated. "Arthur," Marcus yelled sharply, "what are you doing in this section?" Arthur jumped in surprise. The sudden shout startled him badly. His hand slipped from the plastic handle. The heavy bucket tilted sideways. Water splashed loudly onto the concrete floor. A small puddle formed rapidly near Marcus's polished leather shoes. Marcus stared at the spilled water. His face turned bright red with anger. He stepped forward aggressively. "You clumsy old fool!" Marcus shouted. His voice echoed over the barking dogs. "I am sorry, Mr. Marcus," Arthur stammered. He bent down quickly to grab the fallen bucket. "My hand slipped. I will clean it up right now, I promise. You waste our resources." "You waste my time," Marcus said. He did not step back to give the old man room. Instead, he reached out with both hands. He shoved Arthur hard in the center of his chest. Arthur stumbled backward clumsily. His work boots slipped on the wet concrete. He fell hard against the rigid chain-link fence behind him. The metal fence rattled loudly under the impact. The dogs around them started barking frantically at the sudden violence. Arthur stayed on the ground. He held his left shoulder tightly. He looked down at the wet floor, completely avoiding Marcus's angry eyes. Anton dropped the stack of crates. The hard plastic hit the ground with a loud crack. Marcus snapped his head toward the sudden sound. He saw Anton standing 10 feet away. Anton's face remained entirely blank and emotionless, but his dark eyes locked intensely onto Marcus. His fists tightened instinctively at his sides. The thick muscles in his forearms flexed under his skin. Years of intense combat training screamed at Anton to close the distance instantly and drop the threat to the ground. Marcus cleared his throat nervously. He broke eye contact first. He adjusted his expensive suit jacket. He pointed a sharp finger down at Arthur. "Get a mop and dry this mess up immediately," Marcus ordered the old man. He turned his head to look at Anton. "You, get back to the loading dock. A delivery truck just arrived outside." Marcus turned around and walked briskly back toward the cool air-conditioned offices. He did not look back. Anton did not move toward the dock. He walked straight over to Arthur. He extended a large, heavily scarred hand down to the floor. Arthur looked at the hand. He reached up slowly. Anton pulled the old man to his feet with total ease, lifting him as if he weighed nothing. "Are you hurt?" Anton asked. His tone was serious. No, Arthur said quickly. He brushed dust off his faded green vest. "I am fine. It was my fault. I am just clumsy these days." "He should not have pushed you," Anton said. His voice stayed dangerously low. Arthur picked up his empty bucket. He looked at Anton with very tired, sad eyes. "He is the boss here. I am just a volunteer. I need to be here for them. Arthur nodded toward the rows of cages. "If I leave, who will give them extra water in this heat?" Anton looked at the frail old man. He looked at the spilled water soaking into the concrete. He nodded slowly in silent understanding. "I will get the mop," Anton said. Anton walked back to the supply closet. He grabbed the heavy mop. He thought about the arrogant man in the tailored suit. He thought about the shiny brass donor plaques in the perfect front lobby. This shelter definitely hid ugly, dark secrets behind its closed doors. Anton gripped the wooden handle of the mop tightly. He was going to find out exactly what those secrets were, and he was going to tear them down. Anton returned to his duties after the incident with the spilled bucket. He pushed the heavy industrial mop across the wet concrete floor. His muscles worked in a steady, practiced rhythm. The repetitive motion gave his mind space to analyze his surroundings. A trained operator never just occupies a physical space. He actively maps it. He noted the main exits, the camera blind spots, and the structural weak points of the Austin Animal Haven. The shelter possessed a clear division. The front lobby sparkled with false warmth and bright lights. The main kennel area held the adoptable dogs, loud but highly visible to the public. But Anton noticed a third section during his sweeps. A heavy steel door sat at the far end of the back hallway. No windows broke its solid gray surface. A modern keypad lock secured the heavy handle. Facilities built on lies always have a hidden zone. People lock away the things they cannot sell, fix, or control. Anton knew this fundamental rule of human nature. It applied to maximum security prisons, hostile military bases, and apparently animal rescues. He emptied his dirty bucket into the central floor drain. He refilled it with fresh chemical cleaner and cold water. 2 young kennel workers hurried past him down the aisle. They wore matching bright polo shirts with the shelter logo embroidered on the chest. They avoided his eyes completely. They also made a wide circle to avoid looking at the old volunteer, Arthur. Arthur swept the dry aisles with quiet, intense focus. He kept his gray head down. He did not speak a single word to the younger staff members. Anton watched the old man closely. Arthur moved with a deliberate slowness. To the casual observer, it looked like the deep exhaustion of old age. But Anton recognized something entirely different. It looked exactly like the careful, calculated movement of someone trying very hard to remain invisible in a hostile environment. The afternoon heat finally peaked outside. The deafening noise in the main kennels slowly died down as the dogs surrendered to the oppressive Texas temperature. Anton moved his cleaning cart toward the far end of the building. He wanted a closer look at that restricted steel door. He scrubbed the floor slowly near the keypad. He checked the hinges without turning his head. Solid steel construction, heavy-duty security pins. You do not install a door like that just to keep a sick dog quarantined. You install a door like that to keep something dangerous inside or to keep prying eyes safely outside. A small red light blinked steadily on the security keypad. Anton committed the manufacturer brand to his memory. He knew the default override codes. He could bypass it later tonight if the situation required it. Soft footsteps approached from the left corridor. Anton kept his head down and pushed the mop forward. Arthur appeared around the concrete corner. The old man carried a small, covered plastic bowl. He held it tight against his chest, hiding it carefully under his faded green volunteer vest. Arthur stopped walking. He looked anxiously over his shoulder. The long hallway remained completely empty. He did not seem to register Anton as a potential threat. To Arthur, Anton was just the new, silent janitor. He was just another invisible worker in a place full of invisible victims. Arthur knelt painfully in front of the heavy steel door. He set the plastic bowl down on the concrete floor. Anton smelled the contents immediately. Cooked white chicken, fresh steamed rice. A massive upgrade from the cheap dry kibble Marcus provided to the rest of the animals. Arthur reached deep into his pants pocket. He pulled out a small, flat metal key. He did not touch the electronic keypad. He slid the key into a hidden manual override lock located beneath the main handle. He turned it with a soft metallic click. He did not open the door fully. He only cracked it open 2 small inches. The heavy steel hinges groaned loudly in protest. The air that suddenly escaped from the dark room felt ice cold. Marcus clearly routed the maximum air conditioning output directly to this isolated cell, while the rest of the dogs baked in the summer heat. Arthur pushed the bowl of fresh food slowly through the narrow gap. He lowered his wrinkled face close to the crack in the door. "I am here, my strong friend," Arthur whispered. His voice shook with deep emotion. "I brought you something good today. You need to eat." Total silence answered him from the other side. The absolute darkness inside the room seemed to swallow the dim light from the hallway. Then, the dreadful sound started. It did not begin as a normal bark. It started extremely low, a deep, guttural rumble vibrating in the chest of a massive animal. The growl built slowly and steadily. It carried a raw menace that physically shook the concrete floor beneath their boots. It was the terrifying sound of a creature pushed far beyond the edge of sanity, completely cornered and ready to violently destroy absolutely anything that came near it. The 2 young kennel workers from earlier suddenly stepped into the hallway carrying leashes. They froze instantly when they heard the vibrating noise. The blood rapidly drained from their young faces. "Get away from there, Arthur!" one of the workers shouted loudly. His voice cracked with genuine panic. "That crazy monster will rip your arm right off." They did not wait for a calm response. They turned sharply and sprinted back toward the safety of the main office, terrified by the sheer power of the unseen animal. Anton stood completely still behind his cart. His resting heart rate did not spike at all. He recognized that specific growl perfectly. A normal frightened dog barks wildly and erratically. A truly dangerous dog stays dead silent before it strikes its target. But this particular growl held a very specific, disciplined pitch. It sounded exactly like a stern warning from a highly trained military asset. It sounded like a veteran soldier explicitly telling the enemy to step back or face immediate death. Arthur did not flinch at the terrifying noise. He did not pull away from the heavy steel door in fear. Instead, the old man pressed his forehead gently against the cold metal surface. Hot tears slipped silently down his weathered cheeks. They caught the dim hallway light briefly before falling heavily to the concrete floor. "I know," Arthur whispered softly into the dark crack, ignoring the deadly growl entirely. "I know they hurt you badly. I know you are so scared. But you are a good boy. You are a brave, strong boy. I will never leave you alone in the dark." The violent growl wavered slightly. It dropped half an octave. It did not stop completely, but the raw, killing aggression slowly softened into something else. It softened into a sound that sounded painfully close to a quiet sob. Anton gripped the wooden mop handle tightly. He stared blankly at the locked steel door. The scattered puzzle pieces in his mind started slamming violently into place. This corrupt shelter held a prisoner of war, and old Arthur was its only faithful guard. The next morning brought a frantic energy to the Austin Animal Haven. Delivery trucks arrived before the sun rose. Staff members ran back and forth, carrying heavy boxes. They stacked them neatly in the highly visible storage areas near the front. Anton arrived exactly at his scheduled time. He wore his dusty boots and faded jeans. He walked straight into the employee locker room and grabbed his large cleaning cart. Arthur sat quietly on a small plastic stool in the corner. The old man wrapped a thin medical bandage around his left wrist. He looked up when Anton entered the room. Arthur gave a small, tired nod. He did not say a single word about the violent incident from the previous afternoon. He simply picked up his green volunteer vest, put it on, and walked out to the kennels. Anton pushed his cart down the hall to the front lobby. Marcus stood near the automatic glass entrance doors. He wore a brand new suit. It was a light gray jacket paired perfectly with a silk blue tie. He held a silver clipboard and shouted rapid orders at the young receptionists. He demanded the floors be completely spotless. A group of wealthy local donors had scheduled a guided tour for 10 o'clock. Marcus intended to impress them at all costs. Anton moved his wet mop in steady, overlapping circles. He kept his head down. He listened closely to the chaotic instructions echoing around the room. People who sell lies always overcompensate with the illusion of absolute cleanliness. The strong smell of lemon bleach in the lobby did not smell like true hygiene to Anton. It smelled like a desperate attempt to scrub away a rotten core. Anton knew that exact chemical smell from corrupt local outposts overseas. It was the distinct scent of a cover-up. At 10 o'clock sharp, 3 black luxury cars pulled into the front parking lot. 5 people stepped out onto the hot Texas asphalt. 2 older men wore custom-tailored suits. 3 women walked beside them, wearing expensive designer dresses and heavy jewelry. Marcus rushed out through the glass doors to greet them. He smiled widely. His voice dripped with a fake, sugary warmth. "Welcome to our sanctuary," Marcus said loudly. He shook their hands with eager energy. "We are so grateful for your continued support. Please come inside out of the heat." Anton stood quietly near the main supply closet. He held a plastic dustpan. He watched the group walk right past him. They did not even glance in his direction. Marcus led them proudly down the main corridor. He pointed grandly to the framed photos on the freshly painted walls. He talked incredibly fast about their high adoption success rates. He bragged about their state-of-the-art veterinary care. The donors nodded happily. They completely believed every single word of the illusion. Anton followed them at a safe, respectful distance. He carried his mop bucket to maintain his simple cover. Marcus guided the wealthy group into the main kennel area. The dogs immediately barked loudly at the sudden appearance of strangers. The chaotic noise echoed sharply off the hard concrete walls. Marcus raised his voice easily to speak over the racket. "These are our current beloved rescues," Marcus explained. "Many of them come from terrible situations on the streets. We give them a second chance at life here. Thanks to your generous funds, we feed them premium diets and provide extensive daily exercise." One of the older women reached out carefully to pet a small beagle through the wire fence. "You do such wonderful work for this community, Marcus," she said. Marcus placed a hand solemnly over his heart. "It is my calling," he replied smoothly. Anton scrubbed a dark spot on the floor nearby. He tightened his grip on the wooden mop handle. He fought a very strong urge to speak up. He had seen Arthur feeding those exact dogs moldy, cheap kibble just yesterday. Marcus absolutely did not spend the donation money on the animals. The guided tour continued slowly toward the back of the large building. Marcus deliberately stopped the group at the start of the dark, isolated hallway. He pointed a dramatic finger toward the heavy steel door at the far end. His face suddenly turned deadly serious. His bright smile vanished. He lowered his voice to a hushed, theatrical whisper. "Down that hall is our critical care isolation unit," Marcus said gravely. The donors leaned in closer to listen. "We have a very tragic case behind that steel door. A massive German Shepherd. We rescued him 2 weeks ago from a brutal fighting ring." The women gasped softly in horror. "He is extremely aggressive," Marcus continued, shaking his head. "He is totally broken mentally. Most shelters in this state would put him down immediately. But we do not give up here. We are currently spending thousands of dollars on special behavioral therapy experts for him. We refuse to quit on this poor creature." One of the older men reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a leather checkbook. "That is incredible dedication, Marcus. I want to contribute specifically to his intensive rehabilitation fund right now." Marcus nodded his head slowly with deep gratitude. "Thank you so much. Your generosity directly saves lives today." The group finally turned around and walked back toward the bright front lobby to process the large donation. Anton waited patiently until the heavy double doors swung fully closed behind them. The back hallway instantly fell into a heavy, oppressive silence. Anton put his cleaning bucket down. He walked slowly down the dark corridor toward the restricted steel door. His boots made absolutely no sound on the concrete. He stopped directly in front of the heavy metal frame. The security keypad blinked its small red light in the dark. Anton knelt down onto the cold floor. He lowered his face close to the narrow gap at the bottom of the door. He did not hear a violent growl this time. He only heard slow, deep, controlled breathing. Anton squinted his eyes into the absolute darkness of the cell. Slowly, a large shape shifted in the deep shadows. A pair of sharp, intelligent amber eyes appeared near the very bottom of the door. The eyes locked directly onto Anton through the narrow gap. The dog did not act wild. It did not bark. It simply stared with a quiet, calculating intensity. Anton felt a sudden, shocking cold chill run rapidly down his spine. He stopped breathing for a second. He knew those eyes perfectly. He had seen that exact, calculating, disciplined stare in the middle of a dusty war zone thousands of miles away. A deep, impossible familiarity struck him hard in the chest. Night fell over Austin. The thick heat of the day finally broke. Anton parked his rusted pickup truck 3 blocks away from the animal shelter. He walked the rest of the way. He wore dark clothes. He moved silently through the back alleys. He reached the rear perimeter fence. He climbed over the chain link easily. He dropped onto the concrete ground without making a single sound. The shelter looked entirely different at midnight. The bright, false warmth of the daytime lobby vanished completely. Only a few security lights cast long, harsh shadows across the parking lot. Anton approached the back entrance. He did not use the main keypad. He pulled a small set of metal lockpicks from his pocket. He knelt by the heavy service door. He manipulated the internal pins. The lock clicked open in less than 20 seconds. Anton slipped inside the building. He closed the door gently behind him. The air inside felt stale and heavy. A chorus of soft whimpers and uneasy movement echoed from the main kennel area. The dogs sensed an intruder. Anton did not walk toward them. He moved deliberately down the dark side corridor. He headed straight for the restricted section. A good soldier learns to trust his gut instincts above all else. Anton felt a warning screaming in his mind, since he looked through that narrow gap in the door earlier today. He needed to see the animal inside. He needed absolute proof. He reached the heavy steel door. The red light on the keypad glowed steadily in the absolute darkness. Anton ignored the electronic lock. He remembered Arthur using a manual key. Anton knelt and examined the hidden keyhole near the bottom handle. He inserted his tension wrench and a small hook pick. This lock proved much tougher than the exterior door. Marcus definitely paid good money to secure this specific room. Anton worked patiently. He kept his breathing slow and steady. He listened to the tiny metallic clicks inside the cylinder. 1 minute passed, then 2. Finally, the cylinder turned. The heavy internal bolt slid back heavily. Anton stood up. He placed his left hand firmly on the door handle. He rested his right hand near his hip, ready to defend himself if necessary. He knew the immense power of a fully grown, aggressive German Shepherd. He did not want to hurt the animal, but he also did not want to die in a dark room in Texas. He pulled the heavy door open. The air conditioning hit his face immediately. The room felt freezing cold. Anton stepped slowly across the threshold. He pulled a small tactical flashlight from his pocket. He clicked it on. He used a red lens filter to avoid blinding himself or the dog. The red beam cut through the heavy darkness. It illuminated a small, completely bare concrete cell. No bed, no toys, just a metal water bowl and the plastic food container Arthur left earlier. A deep, vibrating growl instantly filled the small space. Anton stopped moving completely. He kept the flashlight beam pointed at the floor. He slowly raised his eyes. The massive German Shepherd stood in the far corner. The dog pressed its back hard against the concrete wall. Its thick fur stood straight up along its spine. Its teeth bared aggressively. The growl sounded raw and incredibly dangerous. This animal was fully prepared to fight to the death. Anton did not retreat. He did not show fear. He lowered his body slowly until he knelt on one knee. He kept his hands open and visible at his sides. He knew standard civilian dog training did not apply here. He needed to speak the dog's true language. Anton took a slow, deep breath. He spoke a single word: stand. He did not shout. He spoke the command in a firm, calm, and distinctly authoritative tone. It was a precise military command. The dog stopped growling instantly. The sudden silence in the cold room felt deafening. The massive German Shepherd tilted its head slightly. Its ears twitched. The dog took one very small, hesitant step forward out of the corner. Anton kept his body perfectly still. He slowly raised the red flashlight beam just a few inches. The dim light swept over the dog's face. Anton focused on the dog's left ear. A deep, jagged scar cut directly across the top of the ear. It looked exactly like a crescent moon. The scar tissue appeared old and fully healed, but the distinct shape remained unmistakable. Anton felt a sudden sharp pain in his chest. His breath caught in his throat. His vision blurred slightly for a brief second. "Max," Anton whispered. His voice cracked with heavy emotion. The German Shepherd froze entirely. The dog stared intensely at the man kneeling on the floor. The dog's nose twitched rapidly, pulling in the scent of the intruder. Anton slowly reached his right hand up to his own neck. He pulled a silver chain out from beneath his dark shirt. 2 metal dog tags hung from the chain. They clinked softly together in the quiet room. The dog heard the familiar metallic sound. The animal let out a sharp, high-pitched whine. It was a sound of desperate, confused recognition. "It is me, buddy," Anton said softly. "It is really me." Max did not hesitate anymore. The massive military dog lunged forward across the concrete floor. Anton braced himself. Max hit him squarely in the chest. The heavy impact knocked Anton backward onto the cold floor. But the dog did not bite. Max buried his large head violently into Anton's neck. The dog let out a series of loud, frantic whimpers. He licked Anton's face, his ears, his hands. Max pressed his heavy body entirely against Anton, trembling violently from head to tail. Anton wrapped both of his strong arms tightly around the dog's thick neck. He buried his face deep into the coarse fur. He closed his eyes. The smell of the cold concrete faded away. He suddenly remembered the burning sand, the deafening explosions, and the terrifying chaos of the battlefield. He remembered the exact moment. A hidden, explosive device detonated near his unit. He remembered falling hard. And he remembered this exact dog, dragging him fiercely by his tactical vest out of the direct line of enemy fire. Max saved his life that day. The military officially retired the dog shortly after due to combat trauma. They sent Max back to the United States to a designated handler. Anton stayed deployed overseas for 2 more years. He always believed his old partner lived a quiet, comfortable life on a large farm somewhere. He never imagined finding his savior locked in a freezing, dark cell in a corrupt Texas animal shelter, labeled as an uncontrollable monster by a greedy man in a tailored suit. Anton sat up slowly. Max refused to leave his side. The large dog pressed his heavy head firmly onto Anton's lap. Anton gently stroked the crescent moon scar on Max's ear. A deep, burning anger ignited violently inside Anton's chest. It felt much hotter and far more dangerous than the Texas sun outside. Marcus did not just lock up a random stray dog. He imprisoned a decorated war hero to scam rich donors out of their money. "I am getting you out of here," Anton promised quietly into the dark room. He looked at the heavy steel door. "But first, I am going to tear this whole place down." Anton knew he could not just walk out with the dog tonight. Marcus would call the police and report a theft. Anton needed solid, undeniable proof of the corruption to destroy the shelter director completely. He gently pushed Max back. He gave a silent hand signal. Max instantly sat down and remained perfectly still. The discipline never left him. Anton walked out of the cell. He locked the heavy door behind him. He stepped back into the shadows of the hallway. The mission parameters just changed. This was no longer just an observation job. This was a rescue operation. The morning sun beat down heavily on the loading dock of the Austin Animal Haven. Anton stood quietly near the large green dumpsters. He held a heavy black trash bag in his hands. He did not throw it away immediately. He watched the delivery area with careful attention. People often mistake physical slowness for mental decline. Anton knew better. In a combat zone, the slowest sniper always survives the longest because he blends into the background. Here at the shelter, Arthur moved slower than anyone else. But Anton started to see the sharp, calculating focus hiding behind the old man's tired eyes. A large white delivery truck backed up to the concrete ramp. A new man stepped out of the cab. This was Pete. Pete was a stout delivery driver. He wore a sweat-stained blue cap and a dirty gray shirt. He opened the heavy back doors of the truck. Inside sat wooden pallets stacked high with premium brand dog food. It was the exact expensive food Marcus bragged about to the wealthy donors yesterday. Marcus walked out of the air-conditioned office building. He held his shiny silver clipboard. He greeted Pete with a wide, fake smile. They did not shake hands. Marcus pulled a thick white envelope from his tailored jacket. He handed it to Pete. Pete slipped the envelope quickly into his front pants pocket without counting the contents. 50 bags of the premium blend, Marcus said loudly. He looked around the empty yard to ensure nobody was watching closely. Just drop them right here on the dock. I will have my staff move them inside later. Pete nodded in agreement. He used a manual pallet jack. He pulled one single pallet out of the truck. It held exactly 20 bags of food. He dropped the pallet heavily on the concrete dock. He closed the back doors of the truck. He climbed into the cab and drove away quickly. 30 bags of expensive donor-funded food vanished before they ever touched the shelter floor. Marcus signed the delivery manifest for 50 bags. He turned around and walked briskly back inside to his cool office. Anton stayed completely still in the shadows. He watched Arthur. The old man stood 20 feet away, near the water hoses. Arthur held a wide push broom. He looked completely absorbed in sweeping a clean patch of concrete. His hands shook visibly. His back stooped low. He looked exactly like a harmless, fragile volunteer. But Anton watched Arthur's eyes. The old man did not look at the ground. He stared directly at the 20 bags of dog food on the pallet. His lips moved silently. He counted them. He looked at the clipboard Marcus casually left on a nearby metal barrel. Arthur shuffled over to the barrel. He pretended to sweep the dirt around it. He glanced down sharply at the signed manifest. He memorized the false numbers. Arthur pulled a small pencil stub from his pants pocket. He reached deep into his green volunteer vest. He pulled out a tiny, crumpled notepad. He quickly scribbled something down on the paper. He shoved the pad and pencil back into his pockets. He went back to sweeping slowly, just as a young kennel worker walked outside. The old man played a brilliant, highly dangerous game. He hid entirely in plain sight. He used his advanced age and his perceived weakness as a perfect camouflage. Anton finished his trash run. He spent the next 3 hours cleaning the indoor kennels. He waited patiently for the right moment. He needed to speak with Arthur alone. He needed to talk about the military dog locked in the freezing cell. He needed to coordinate a solid plan. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the shelter grew quiet. The staff took their scheduled lunch breaks. Anton walked toward the back storage shed. He knew Arthur kept his cleaning supplies there. He opened the wooden door quietly. The shed smelled like old hay and thick dust. Arthur knelt on the dirt floor in the dim light. He had his large plastic water bucket placed in front of him. The bucket looked completely empty. Arthur held a small flathead screwdriver. He wedged the metal tool firmly into the bottom seam of the bucket. Anton stepped fully into the shed. His heavy boots crunched loudly on the dry dirt floor. Arthur jumped violently. He gasped in pure panic. His sudden, jerky movement knocked the large plastic bucket over. It hit the ground hard. The bottom panel of the bucket popped completely off. It was a cleverly designed false bottom. A thick, clear plastic Ziploc bag fell out onto the dirt floor. Arthur lunged forward for it. His old hands scrambled desperately in the dust. Anton moved much faster. He stepped forward and picked up the plastic bag. He stood tall and looked at the contents. He did not break the seal. He could see perfectly through the clear plastic. Inside sat dozens of carefully folded papers. Anton recognized the specific formats instantly. Bank deposit slips, printed shipping manifests, copies of falsified veterinary bills, and several small crumpled pages torn from a notebook. The notebook pages held neat, tiny handwriting. They listed exact dates, missing inventory numbers, and names of phantom buyers who purchased the stolen donor supplies directly from Marcus. Arthur slowly stood up. His face turned extremely pale. His whole body trembled. He looked utterly terrified. "Please," Arthur begged. His voice cracked painfully. "Give that back to me. You do not understand what is happening here. If you give that to Marcus, he will destroy me. He will destroy all the animals in this place." Anton looked at the terrified old man. He felt a deep, profound respect for him. Arthur risked his life and his freedom every single day to protect these helpless dogs. He built a solid criminal case against a powerful, connected man entirely on his own. "I am not giving this to Marcus," Anton said. His voice stayed completely calm and level. "I am going to use this to put him in a federal prison." Arthur stared at Anton. Deep confusion rapidly replaced the fear in his eyes. "Who are you?" Anton held the plastic bag tightly in his left hand. He looked directly into Arthur's eyes. "I know about the restricted room at the end of the hall," Anton said quietly. "I went inside last night. I know about the German Shepherd." Arthur took a frightened step back. He shook his head wildly. "No, you cannot hurt him. He is a good boy. They beat him. They broke him. He just needs more time to heal." "I am not going to hurt him," Anton interrupted softly. "His name is Max. He is a retired military working dog. He served 3 combat tours. He saved my life in a war zone 4 years ago. He is my partner." Arthur stopped moving completely. His mouth fell open slightly. He stared at Anton for a long time. A heavy, stunning silence filled the dusty storage shed. Hot tears suddenly welled up in Arthur's tired eyes. He reached out and grabbed Anton's forearm. His grip felt surprisingly strong. "I knew it," Arthur whispered fiercely. "I knew he belonged to someone important. I kept him alive. I fed him the good food from my own house. I talked to him every single day through that door so he would not forget how to love." Anton placed his large hand gently over Arthur's hand. "You did a great job, Arthur. You kept my partner safe. Now, it is my turn to finish the mission." Anton held up the plastic bag full of criminal evidence. "This is exactly what I need. Marcus is stealing money. He is stealing supplies. He is using a decorated war hero to scam rich donors out of thousands of dollars. I am going to end this today." Arthur nodded rapidly. The fear completely left his weathered face. A new, bright fire burned in his eyes. "What do we do now? Marcus is getting highly suspicious. He mentioned moving the big dog away soon. We are running out of time. We let him feel safe for a few more hours," Anton said. He handed the plastic bag back to Arthur. "Hide this again. Keep it perfectly safe on your person. I need to make a secure phone call to my commanding officer at the base. When we hit this place tonight, we hit it with everything we have." Arthur took the bag. He secured it inside his jacket. He looked up at Anton with pure determination. "I will be ready." Anton turned around and walked out of the shed. The Texas sun felt hotter now. The stakes felt much higher. Marcus had absolutely no idea what kind of storm was about to hit his perfect, corrupt little world. The shelter closed early that evening. Marcus locked the front glass doors at 4 o'clock sharp. He drew the heavy window blinds down tightly against the setting Texas sun. A nervous, frantic energy replaced his usual arrogant swagger. Anton noticed the sudden shift in routine immediately. He stayed out of sight near the back washing stations. He cleaned the same metal bowls repeatedly, keeping his hands busy while his eyes tracked every movement. He watched Marcus pace back and forth in the main hallway. The shelter director held his cell phone tightly to his ear. His voice sounded tight and panicked, echoing slightly off the hard walls. Word spread quickly among the remaining staff members. The State Veterinary Board scheduled a surprise, full facility inspection for tomorrow morning. They demanded to see every single animal on the premises and every corresponding medical file. Men built on greed rarely retreat gracefully when trapped. They usually destroy everything around them to protect their stolen comfort. Marcus was no exception to this rule. He could not let the state inspectors see the undocumented sick dogs he planned to sell illegally. He especially could not let them find a highly trained military working dog locked in a freezing, dark cell without a single record of intake. At 6 o'clock, an unmarked white cargo van backed up to the rear loading dock. The engine idled loudly, blowing thick exhaust fumes into the yard. Two large men stepped out of the front cab. They did not wear uniforms or name tags. They carried heavy catch poles with thick wire loops. They looked like professional handlers who did not ask questions. Marcus rushed out to meet them on the concrete ramp. He pointed urgently toward the restricted back hallway. "We have to move them right now," Marcus ordered the men. "Take the sick ones first. Load them tight. Do not worry about keeping them separated. Then we get the big one in the back room." Anton stood quietly in the shadows of the supply room. He pulled out his own cell phone. He sent a single, pre-written text message to his commanding officer at the naval base. The message contained only 3 words: "Execute the raid." He slipped the phone securely back into his pocket. He calculated the response time. He needed to buy exactly 10 minutes. The 2 large men walked heavily down the kennel aisles. The dogs instantly sensed their hostile intent. The entire building erupted into frantic barking and terrified whining. The men grabbed 3 frightened, sickly dogs from their cages. They shoved them roughly into small plastic transport crates. The men carried the heavy crates out to the idling van without any care for the animals inside. Arthur appeared from the side corridor. The old man held his sweeping broom. He saw the strange men taking the sick animals toward the unmarked van. His eyes went wide with pure terror. He knew exactly what this meant. Marcus intended to make the evidence disappear permanently before the morning inspection. "No!" Arthur yelled. His voice cracked and echoed sharply against the concrete walls. "You cannot take them away. They are sick. They need their medicine." Marcus completely ignored the old man. He signaled the 2 men to follow him. They marched directly toward the restricted steel door at the very end of the hall. Marcus pulled a master key from his tailored suit pocket. His hands shook slightly as he unlocked the heavy door. He pushed it wide open. The freezing air rushed out into the warm hallway. A deep, violent growl erupted instantly from the absolute darkness inside the cell. Max knew these men did not come to feed him. "Get the wire loop around his neck," Marcus shouted to the handlers. "Drag him out. I do not care if he chokes. Just get him in the back of the van immediately." The men stepped forward cautiously. They raised the heavy metal catch poles. Max stepped forward into the dim light. He bared his sharp teeth. He snapped aggressively at the approaching wire loop. He backed himself tight into the concrete corner. He prepared his body for a brutal fight to the death. Arthur did not hesitate. The frail old man dropped his broom. He sprinted down the hallway with a sudden burst of desperate speed. He pushed roughly past Marcus. He threw his body directly in front of the open steel door. Arthur spread his thin arms wide, completely blocking the entrance to the cell. "You will not touch him!" Arthur screamed loudly. Hot tears streamed down his weathered face. "He is a good boy. Leave him alone." Marcus turned bright red with absolute fury. The veins in his neck bulged. He stepped forward quickly. He did not yell this time. He raised his heavy right fist. He struck Arthur violently across the side of the face. The brutal impact spun the old man around. Arthur collapsed heavily onto the hard concrete floor. He hit his head sharply against the metal door frame. He lay completely still, groaning softly in deep pain. Blood trickled slowly from a deep cut above his left eye. Inside the cold cell, Max saw his only friend fall to the ground. The dog let out a deafening, terrifying roar. Max lunged forward toward Marcus with explosive speed. One of the handlers reacted just in time. He swung his thick metal catch pole like a baseball bat. The heavy pole struck Max hard across the ribs. The massive dog yelped in sharp pain, but kept his ground. Max stepped forward and stood directly over Arthur's fallen body, shielding the old man with his own physical bulk. "Hit him again," Marcus yelled frantically. "Break his legs if you have to. We are completely out of time." The handler raised the heavy steel pole high into the air again. He aimed directly for the military dog's head. A loud metallic crash echoed deafeningly through the entire shelter. The heavy steel rolling door of the loading dock slammed upward. It hit the ceiling track with explosive force. The sudden violent noise startled everyone in the hallway. The handler froze with the heavy pole still raised high in the air. Marcus spun around in absolute panic. Anton stepped out of the deep shadows of the loading bay. He no longer walked with a slow, clumsy shuffle. He stood completely straight. His broad shoulders squared. His hands rested loosely at his sides, ready for immediate, devastating violence. The dusty, invisible janitor vanished completely. In his place stood a highly trained, active-duty Navy SEAL. His dark eyes locked onto his targets with absolute, chilling precision. "Put the pole down," Anton commanded. His voice did not shout. It cut cleanly through the heavy tension like a sharp razor blade. It carried the absolute, undeniable authority of a man fully prepared to kill. Marcus stared blindly at Anton. He blinked his eyes in deep confusion. "You, the cleaner! Get out of here right now, or I will have you arrested for criminal trespassing." Anton did not look at Marcus at all. He kept his cold eyes locked firmly on the large man holding the weapon directly above his dog. "I will only say it exactly once," Anton said softly. His combat boots took one slow, deliberate step forward on the concrete. "Drop the weapon right now, or I will break both of your arms." The handler looked deeply into Anton's cold, dead eyes. He looked at the thick, corded muscles flexing in Anton's forearms. The handler swallowed hard. He slowly lowered the heavy metal pole to the floor. He stepped backward, away from the dog. Marcus panicked completely. He reached desperately into his tailored jacket pocket. "I am calling the police," Marcus screamed loudly. Anton finally turned his head to look at the corrupt shelter director. A tiny, highly dangerous smile touched the corner of Anton's mouth. "You do not need to call them," Anton replied with total calm. "They are already here." Anton stood perfectly still in the loading bay. The heavy metal pole clattered against the concrete floor. The handler stepped away from the frightened dog and raised his empty hands. Marcus stared at Anton. He opened his mouth to shout another threat, but a new sound cut him off. A loud, piercing siren wailed in the distance. The sound grew louder by the second. Red and blue lights flashed intensely through the high upper windows of the kennel. 3 local police cruisers swerved aggressively into the shelter parking lot. Their tires screeched loudly on the hot asphalt. The vehicles blocked the front gates and the rear exit completely. Doors opened rapidly. Several officers stepped out into the humid evening air. They moved with quick, trained precision. Officer Davis entered the building first. He was a tall, broad-shouldered local police veteran wearing a dark blue uniform and a heavy-duty belt. He kept his right hand resting casually near his holster. Two other officers followed closely behind him. They walked straight past the front desk and headed directly toward the loud commotion in the back hallway. Marcus panicked. He spun around wildly. He looked at the unmarked white van outside. He looked at the heavy steel door. He looked down at Arthur, who still lay bleeding on the floor. Marcus scrambled desperately toward his tailored jacket. He reached into the inner pocket and pulled out a stack of folded documents. He needed to destroy the fake transport manifests immediately. He looked around for a trash can or a drain. Men who build empires on lies always crumble the fastest when forced to face the harsh light of reality. They spend years constructing perfect illusions, but they never plan for the moment those illusions shatter. Marcus looked exactly like a cornered rat. "Stop right there," Officer Davis commanded loudly as he entered the corridor. "Nobody moves." Marcus froze. He dropped the papers onto the concrete. He raised his hands quickly and forced a bright, fake smile onto his face. "Officers, thank goodness you are here." Marcus lied smoothly. He pointed a shaking finger at Anton. "This man is a disgruntled employee. He just broke into our facility. He assaulted my handlers and attacked this poor old volunteer on the floor." Officer Davis did not look at Marcus. He looked directly at Anton. Davis recognized the physical stance immediately. He recognized the cold, disciplined focus in Anton's eyes. Anton slowly reached his right hand into his front pocket. He did not pull out a weapon. He pulled out a small black leather wallet. He flipped it open and held it up clearly in the bright fluorescent light. A solid silver military badge gleamed brightly. "Anton Miller, active duty Navy SEAL," Anton stated clearly. His voice carried absolute authority. "I am operating under direct coordination with the federal authorities regarding stolen military property and felony fraud." Marcus dropped his fake smile. His jaw fell open. The blood drained entirely from his face. He stared at the military badge in absolute shock. The clumsy janitor was a highly trained federal operative. Anton reached into his other pocket. He pulled out the thick, clear plastic bag Arthur had hidden in the feed bucket. He tossed it lightly onto the floor right in front of Officer Davis. "Inside that bag, you will find complete documentation," Anton told the police officer. "Bank deposit slips, fake veterinary bills, and illegal sales records. That man has been stealing thousands of dollars in charity funds. He starves the shelter animals and sells the premium food out the back door." Arthur slowly pushed himself up from the floor. He held his bleeding forehead with one hand. "It is true," the old man said weakly. "I recorded everything. I counted the missing bags. He hit me just now because I tried to stop him from taking the dogs away in that van." Officer Davis nodded slowly. He looked at Marcus. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back." "You cannot do this," Marcus stammered loudly. He backed away until he hit the cold block wall. "I know the mayor. I know powerful people in this city. You are making a massive mistake." "Turn around," Officer Davis repeated firmly. He unclipped his handcuffs. Two other officers stepped forward and grabbed Marcus roughly by the arms. They spun him around and locked the steel cuffs tightly around his wrists. They also detained the two terrified handlers from the van. Anton ignored the arrest completely. He walked past the police officers. He walked past the handcuffed shelter director. He stopped directly in front of the heavy steel door. The door remained wide open. The absolute darkness inside the freezing cell looked thick and heavy. The deep, violent growl still vibrated in the air. Max did not know the police officers. He did not know the situation was secure. He only knew he was cornered, and he was ready to defend himself to the bitter end. The police officers stepped back nervously. They placed their hands on their weapons. They saw the massive size of the German Shepherd lurking in the shadows. "Hold your fire," Anton commanded sharply without looking back. "He is friendly." Anton stood perfectly straight in the doorway. He squared his shoulders. He took a deep breath of the freezing air. He spoke in a loud, clear, and incredibly sharp military tone. It was a voice designed to cut through the deafening noise of combat. K9 Unit Identification Number 7, 4 Bravo, fall in. The violent growl stopped instantly. Total silence fell over the crowded hallway. The police officers watched in stunned disbelief. A massive shape moved in the darkness. Max stepped forward slowly into the light. The large German Shepherd did not look wild anymore. His ears stood straight up. His thick tail lowered to a relaxed, neutral position. He walked with total discipline. He stepped right past the open door frame. Max walked directly to Anton's left side. The dog stopped moving. He sat down sharply on the concrete floor. He pressed his heavy shoulder firmly against Anton's leg. He looked straight ahead, perfectly still, awaiting his next command. Marcus stared at the scene. He realized then that he had not imprisoned a stray dog. He had locked up a highly trained soldier. Anton reached down and rested his hand gently on Max's head. His fingers brushed against the crescent moon scar on the dog's ear. Anton looked at Arthur. The old man smiled brightly through his tears and the blood on his face. "Good boy," Anton whispered softly to his partner. Mission accomplished. The morning sun broke over the Austin Animal Haven. It brought a very different kind of heat today. Local news vans blocked the main parking lot. Reporters held microphones and talked rapidly into heavy black cameras. They covered the biggest local scandal in years. Anton stood quietly near the edge of the property. He wore a clean dark shirt and his tactical boots. He held a thick leather leash in his right hand. Max sat perfectly still at his left side. The massive German Shepherd watched the chaotic crowd with calm, disciplined eyes. The dog no longer looked like a terrified prisoner. He looked exactly like the decorated military veteran he truly was. 2 police officers walked Marcus out through the front glass doors. The shelter director did not wear his expensive tailored jacket anymore. He wore a wrinkled white shirt. Steel handcuffs bound his wrists tightly behind his back. The bright camera flashes hit his face repeatedly. Marcus kept his head down. He stared blankly at the hot asphalt. He ignored the reporters, shouting loud questions at him. People often believe that deep corruption requires a highly complex plan to defeat. Anton knew the truth. Deep corruption only requires one single person willing to stand perfectly still and shine a bright light into the dark corners. Arthur provided the light. Anton simply broke the door down. The police placed Marcus into the back of a patrol car. They drove him away. The heavy metal gates of the shelter closed firmly behind the departing vehicle. 1 week passed quickly. The Austin Animal Haven underwent a massive, rapid transformation. The State Veterinary Board launched a full-scale investigation into the previous administration. Federal authorities audited every single financial record Marcus ever touched. They found exactly what Arthur documented in his hidden notebook. Marcus faced over 20 counts of felony fraud, animal cruelty, and theft of military property. He would spend many years inside a federal prison. Anton parked his rusted pickup truck in the front lot. He turned off the engine. He opened the passenger door. Max jumped out eagerly. The dog sniffed the warm Texas air. His thick tail wagged slowly. His coat looked much healthier now. The dull, dusty fur shined brightly in the sunlight. The crescent moon scar on his ear stood out sharply against the clean fur. They walked together through the front glass doors. The lobby smelled different today. The sharp chemical smell of lemon bleach was completely gone. The air smelled clean and fresh. Arthur stood behind the front desk. The old man looked entirely different. He did not wear the faded, torn green volunteer vest. He wore a crisp, light blue button-down shirt. He stood completely straight. His shoulders no longer stooped with heavy exhaustion. The deep cut above his left eye had healed into a small, clean scab. A young woman stood next to Arthur. This was Sarah. Sarah was a representative from the State Veterinary Board. She held a thick file folder. She looked up and smiled warmly when Anton walked into the room. "Good morning, Anton," Sarah said. She reached down and offered her hand to Max. Max sniffed her hand gently and leaned his heavy head against her leg. "He looks incredible today." "He sleeps a lot," Anton replied softly. "He is finally resting." Arthur walked around the front desk. He knelt down slowly on the clean tile floor. He wrapped his thin arms tightly around the thick neck of the German Shepherd. Max whined softly and licked the old man right on the cheek. "I missed you, my strong friend," Arthur whispered. His voice shook with deep, happy emotion. Anton watched them carefully. "How are things looking here, Arthur?" Arthur stood up and smiled broadly. "Everything is completely different now. The Military Liaison Office contacted us yesterday. They verified all of your reports. They decided to grant this shelter a massive operational fund. We are officially partnering with the armed forces. We will rehabilitate and rehome retired working dogs." Sarah nodded in agreement. "And the State Board officially appointed Arthur as the new interim shelter director. Nobody knows these animals better than he does. Nobody cares for them more." Anton felt a deep sense of absolute peace settle into his chest. The mission was truly complete. He looked at Arthur. The old man possessed immense strength hidden behind his quiet exterior. Arthur fought a terrifying battle completely alone for months. He won. He saved innocent lives. "Before I leave," Anton said quietly, "I want to see the back hallway one last time." Arthur nodded. They walked together down the main corridor. The young kennel workers were busy cleaning cages, but they moved with genuine care now, not rushed fear. They reached the very end of the hall. The heavy steel door was completely gone. Workers had removed it entirely from the hinges. Sunlight poured into the formerly dark cell from a newly installed skylight. The room now served as an open storage area for fresh, high-quality toys and clean blankets. The oppressive freezing air conditioning was fully rebalanced. Anton looked at the bright, empty space. "It looks much better with the light shining in." Arthur touched the clean door frame. "We will never lock another animal in the dark again. I made that promise to the State Board. I made that promise to myself." "Good leaders rarely seek power," Anton stated calmly. "They simply step up when the situation requires it." Anton reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small, heavy brass coin. It was his military unit challenge coin. He pressed it firmly into Arthur's right hand. "Keep this," Anton said. "If you ever need anything, you show that coin to any military base. They will find me." Arthur looked at the shiny brass coin. He closed his hand tightly around it. "Thank you, Anton, for everything, for believing me. Thank you for keeping my partner alive," Anton replied. Anton looked down at Max. He tapped his leg twice. "Ready to go home, buddy?" Max barked once, a loud, happy, ringing sound that echoed brightly through the clean hallway. They walked out of the shelter together. The Texas heat felt comfortable today. Anton opened the passenger door of the truck. Max jumped up easily onto the worn bench seat. The dog sat tall and proud. He looked out the window with bright, intelligent amber eyes. Anton climbed into the driver's seat. He started the engine. The old truck rumbled loudly. Anton put the vehicle into gear. He drove slowly out of the parking lot. He turned onto the main highway. Anton looked over at his old partner. Max rested his large head gently on Anton's right shoulder. Anton reached up and stroked the thick fur. He did not look in the rearview mirror. He did not need to look back. The dark past was completely finished. The road ahead looked wide, open, and incredibly bright. True strength is never about wearing an expensive suit or holding power over others. Real strength is standing up for those who cannot defend themselves. Arthur proved that the quietest people often hold the bravest hearts. He risked his own safety every single day to protect a creature everyone else had completely abandoned. And Anton showed us that true loyalty, forged in the hardest times, never breaks. We must always remember to look past the surface and protect the vulnerable. If this story touched your heart, please share it with your family and friends. Leave a comment below to let us know your thoughts, and do not forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. May God bless you abundantly and give you the courage to always do what is right. Type Amen in the comments if you believe that light will always conquer the darkness.